Hello, welcome to the March of the Ants playthrough video. My name is Tim Eisner and I'm one of the designers of March of the Ants. I'm going to give you a run through of the gameplay and mechanics. We're going to play a 3-player game and we're going to play the quick game. Normally a 3 and 4-player game is played over 4 rounds, but we're just going to play 3 rounds total, but it'll give you a good idea of how the game is played, how the mechanics work. So to start off, each player starts with 2 food in their food stores, 5 larvae in their larva chamber, 1 ant in the great tunnel, and 1 ant on the score track. They also start with 2 cards which have been shuffled and dealt out, and 1 player is randomly determined as the starting player. The red nest is going to be the starting nest because red is my favorite color. And to start off, the red nest is going to take the explore action. Explore action will cost 1 food and allows the red nest to explore 1 meadow hex. So they will flip over the top meadow hex from the pile, and then they choose to place it anywhere adjacent to somewhere that they inhabit. Currently they only inhabit the Great Tunnel, so they must place it somewhere with a tunnel connected to the Great Tunnel. There's lots of tunnels coming out here, so there's a lot of places they can place it, a lot of choices. And after they place it, they must move 1 ant into that explored hex, at least 1 ant. They can move more if they have them, but right now the red nest only has 1. About this meadow hex is the loamy tunnels. It has a few collection sites, food, larva, larva. It also has a defender site. All sites have a defender site, which we'll go over a little bit later. They're important. And this is kind of a special hex because it has a wormhole. Wormholes are connected to any other hex that has a wormhole in the meadow. So the red nest will place the loamy tunnels like so. So they have this tunnel they can explore out of, and then they must move 1 ant into that hex. When an ant moves into a hex, if there are open collection sites, they will immediately inhabit one of them. That player will choose which one they want to inhabit. The red nest will choose to inhabit the food collection site, also the defender site, and food is a pretty important resource early in the game. Each action that players will take in March of the Ants also has a secondary action that all the other nests get to take. And so the secondary action from Explore is each player may place 1 larva onto a hex that they inhabit. So the blue nest and the black nest both only inhabit the Great Tunnel, but they will move 1 larva out there, start getting some more ants onto the board. When larvae move to the meadow, they immediately become ants. It's now the blue nest's turn. The blue nest is also going to explore, spending 1 food, revealing the top meadow hex. Can choose to place it anywhere in the meadow, and we'll choose to place it like so. And then they must move at least 1 ant into that newly explored hex or more. They're going to choose to move 2 in there, inhabiting the card collection site and the food site. Each other nest gets to take the secondary action. The black nest will move 1 other ant onto the board, and the red nest will move another ant onto the board. They can either move it into the Great Tunnel, which is always considered inhabited, so you can always send new larvae there, or onto the loamy tunnels. The red nest will put it into the Great Tunnel because it wants to be able to explore out from some of these other tunnels. And now it comes to the black nest's turn. The black nest is going to go ahead and choose to play a card called Egg Stealer. An Egg Stealer is an event card. Event cards have red borders. They're played once and then they are discarded. Each card in March of the Ants has a cost up in the top corner, and the cost must be paid in either ants or larvae. This action playing cards does not cost any food, but it does cost the larvae or ants to play them. This costs 1. The black nest is going to choose to pay 1 larva, and what this card does is each other player loses 1 larva, so the blue nest will lose a larva, red nest loses a larva, and the black nest, you gain 3 larvae. So the black nest will gain 3 larvae, net total of 2, but each other nest lost 1 as well, and this card is then discarded. Secondary of play a card is each other player may discard a card to draw a card. The red nest is going to discard an event card that it's not interested in playing at this time, hoping to draw something a little more useful. And the black nest is happy with the cards it has. I've already looked at them. It's not just because I couldn't pick it up. And now it comes back to the red player's turn. The worker phase is going to continue until at least 2 players rest. And resting is an action that you take when you're all done with all your other actions. Either you don't have any food or larvae left, you're out of resources, or you feel like you have good board position, you don't want to expend any more resources during that turn. So the red nest is going to go ahead and play an evolution called the Amazon head. And the Amazon head is a head evolution. Obviously, it goes into the head spot on the player nest. And it gives you a bonus that when you win a battle, you get to steal 2 larvae from your opponent. If your opponent loses, they lose 2 larvae, you gain 2 larvae. This has an ant cost of 1, so either 1 larva or 1 ant must be paid. It has that little head icon showing that it goes into the head. And it has a green border showing that it's an evolution. Evolutions, unlike event cards, stay in your ant nest and are, used for the rest of the game. The red nest will pay 1 larva to play that card, and then each other player can discard a card to draw a card. The blue nest is happy with their cards, and so is the black nest. Comes back to the blue nest's turn. The blue nest is actually going to play one of these cards that it has right now, and the card it's going to play is the leaf cutter abdomen. There's another evolution, and it costs 3. It's a little more spendy, and it goes into the abdomen. So the abdomen is the back of the ant, and we'll pay the 3 larvae to pay that, keeping its ants on the board. This evolution allows the blue nest to collect food instead of other resources, even if the collection site's not a food. So at this card collection site, they could collect a food from there instead of collecting a card. Each other player can discard a card to draw a card, and no one chooses to do that. Comes back to the black nest's turn. The black nest is going to go ahead and explore. It's got all these ants in the Great Tunnel, wants to get them into a hex where it can start collecting. So it pays 1 food, reveals the top card, and we'll place the dry seed here. It's only got 2 collection sites on it, so the black nest is just going to choose to move 2 ants into there. It must move 1, but other than that, it can move any number that it wishes. Each other nest can now move an ant onto the Great Tunnel. The red nest will move an ant into here. Blue nest does not have a larva, so it cannot move an ant onto the board right now. Comes back to the red nest's turn. The red nest is going to choose to explore again as well, spending 1 food, reveals the top hex, and the red nest is going to go ahead and place this tunnel, this hex here. And the tunnels, you only need a connected tunnel to 1 hex where you're going to move ants from. Other tunnels don't need to connect. You could, but you don't have to. So the red nest does not have to connect, and what it's going to choose to do is block out the black nest here so that it doesn't want to get involved and tangle with the black nest right now. So it's going to move 1 ant into this great tunnel, or into the underleaf, and inhabit the food collection site. Each other nest can then take the secondary action. Blue has no larva, cannot move them onto the board. The black nest does have larva and will move another one onto the board. Comes back to the blue nest turn. The blue nest is going to choose the forage action. Forage costs 1 food, allows you to draw 2 cards, and then each other player, the secondary of the forage action, is to gain 1 larva. So the black nest will gain 1 larva, and the red nest will gain 1 larva. Thank you. It's now the black nest turn, and the black nest is going to go ahead and choose to explore again, get some more territory out there. We'll spend 1 food to explore, reveals the top card, and is going to place it, the tall sand, nope, needs to have the tunnel connected. It's going to place the tall sand over here, diversify its holdings a little bit. And we'll then move these 2 larvae, or these 2 ants, into the tall sand, inhabiting both of the collection sites. Each other player can move a larva onto the board. The red nest will place a larva into here. It inhabits this site. And the blue nest does not have any larvae. Spend them all on that evolution. Maybe a questionable choice, but it might pay off in the long run. We'll see. And then it comes to the red player's turn. The red nest has 1 larva left and no food. Has 1 card, so it could potentially play that, but it'd have to maybe sacrifice some ants on the board. So the red nest is going to choose to rest. When a nest rests, it's pretty much saying it's done taking actions for the rest of the turn. And when you rest, you gain a resource because you're not taking any other actions or activities with your nest. The first time you rest, you gain a larva. Each additional time you rest, you would gain a food. and so that sort of makes up from you missing out on actions. The resources you gain from resting are placed here, and then at the end of the worker phase, once the second players rest, they're moved up into their appropriate spot. The first nest to rest also becomes the starting nest, and will be the first nest to take an action in the subsequent worker phase. So the red nest is going to stay as the starting nest, and then it becomes the blue nest turn. Blue nest is in a similar place. It has no larva, no food. It has a couple cards, but only 2 ants on the board from which to pay for them. We'll choose to rest as well. So 2 nests have rested. 2 nests have rested. That is the end of the worker phase. So they get to move these resting resources up there. And we move into the next phase, which is the soldier phase. In the soldier phase, ant battle takes place in any contested hexes. There are no contested hexes right now. Contested hex is when there are 2 or more nests in one hex, and they are not able to collect. There's some ants that do not have a collection site. So there's not any mixed nest hexes right now, so there's nothing contested. So this, for example, would be a contested hex because there's this one ant here, there's 2 different types of ants in here, and one of them's not able to collect, so it would agitate for a battle. This, for example, is not a contested hex. All the ants have something to collect, they're all happy, working side by side, symbiotically. But in this case, there are no contested hexes, and so we move right past the soldier phase into the queen phase. The first thing that happens in the queen phase is harvest, where you collect resources, and you collect resources from each collection site that your ants inhabit. So the red nest would collect 1 food, 2 food, and a card. So 1, 2 food for the red nest, and 1 card added to its hand. The blue nest will collect 1 food, and would collect 1 card, but is going to use its evolution, this leafcutter abdomen, to collect a food instead. So it's going to collect 2 food. Once the food to take the actions, it already has quite a few cards. And the black nest is going to collect 1 food, 2 food, 2 larvae, and a card. So the black nest collects 2 food, 2 larvae, and 1 card. And then after the harvest, each nest needs to feed its ants. 1 food will feed 4 ants, and you only need to feed ants on the board. The larvae in your chamber don't need to be fed. They're still being reared by the queen and don't need to be fed with your food that you're feeding the ants with. So the red nest has 4 ants on the board. That costs 1 food. The blue nest has 2 ants on the board. It's rounded up, so even 2 ants will cost 1 food, which would feed 4 ants. So the blue nest will pay that. Black nest also has 4 ants. Will pay 1 food to feed all 4 of those. Then comes the royal decree that the queen will decide if you want to gain 2 food or 5 larvae. Sort of balance out your nest economy, decide what you want to do for the next round. The red nest is kind of in a tricky spot. It has 1 food right now and 2 larvae, but it's got some cards that will help it with food. So it's going to decide to go for the 5 larvae, which is pretty useful if you have enough to afford getting 5 larvae. It can be handy, but you definitely need the food to take the majority of the actions. The blue nest has got quite a few cards. It's going to grab 5 larvae as well to be able to pay for some of those cards and get ahead, get some more ants onto the board. The black nest has a ton of larvae, 1 food. It's going to go ahead and get some extra food so it can take more food actions, keep that balanced. And that's the end of the queen phase. Then we come to slumber, where you score stashed colony goals. Nobody has any of those out yet. We'll explain those when we get to them. And you gain 1 point for each inner meadow hex you control. And so the inner meadow is any hex that is adjacent to the Great Tunnel. It doesn't have to have a tunnel connected necessarily, it just needs to be next to it. So even though the underleaf is not directly connected by tunnel, it is right next to the Great Tunnel. So this is all the inner meadow here. And to control one of these hexes, you need to inhabit the defender site. So the red nest controls 1 hex, 2 hexes that are adjacent to the Great Tunnel. We'll move up 2 on the score track. The blue nest controls 1 hex that is adjacent to the Great Tunnel, and the black nest controls 2 hexes that are adjacent to the Great Tunnel. And after that, we advance the round marker, and then we start all over in the worker phase in the second round of the game. We'll bring back that in the next video. Thanks for watching.